Another demonstration video. In this video, we are going to explore some ways to complete the tilt shift city assignment or the miniature city assignment. So the goal of this assignment is to pretty much just create a miniature toy city using some of the features found in Photoshop, like the masking, the layer masking tools, as well as the layer adjustment tools. For this assignment, you can pretty much choose a photograph that you like, something that you find either at a website, search engine like Google, or the Pinterest page that I shared with you at the beginning of this semester. Now, in order to have a really successful miniature city, you want to choose a photo that's above the city itself, um, almost bird's eye view at an angle, somewhat like the examples that I have for you on screen. This one, something like this of London, or this one right here. Now, in order for this to be really successful, you want to choose an image that is of high quality. So, as you're searching through the websites, make sure that is maybe above 800 pixels at its longest side, so that you have a really nice crisp image to work with. It also kind of helps if you have some landmarks in there, so it's going to be a little bit more recognizable. Maybe add some people, if not people, some other elements like boats and cars and whatnot, just to make it look really make it really look like a bustling city. Another thing that you want to keep in mind as you're choosing your photos is that you want to have some kind of a depth in there, some kind of a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, so that once you're creating that tilt shift effect, there's more a stronger sense of depth happening because you're pushing pretty much either the middle ground, the background, or the foreground. All right, so let's get started. As Once you choose the photo that you'd like, all you have to do is pretty much import it through Photoshop. You can just drag it into the program, or you go to File, Open, and then find it through your library or wherever you saved it on your desktop. Next, we are going to once you pretty much upload it, it's going to look like a background layer like this. It's going to be locked, so make sure you unlock it by clicking on the lock icon. Next, we're going to take that layer and then we're going to copy it, just so that you have it there. Now, in order to do this, we're going to also pretty much take two layers and sort of composite them on top of each other, and we're going to do that as we go along. So let's take our layer here, and the first thing we want to do is to bump up the contrast. So you could do that, and the reason for bumping up the contrast is that you're going to make a lot of the colors a little bit more saturated, and you're going to give it this really toy-like appearance. Because of the high contrast, you're not going to have all that nuanced atmosphere in there. So by taking away using levels, and you can find levels by going to Image, Adjustment, Levels. But at this point, maybe we'll do away by going to image adjustments, because if you use the image adjustment levels or any of the categories found over here, you're pretty much gonna permanently apply that effect into the photograph. So what we want to do instead is to head to the layers panel, and again, you're messing around with the first copy right over here. We're going to use the adjustment layers, which is down here. So if you look at the bottom of the panel, it looks like a black and white cookie. So it's like a circle icon with a half shaded in. You want to click on that and make sure your target layer is selected. Click on this. And let me there you go. And then from the subcategory, pick levels. Again, it does pretty much the same thing as going to image adjustment levels. However, this time we are using adjustment layers that you can manipulate as you work on your illustration. So it's not permanently applied onto the layer already. So if you actually don't like it, you can just take that layer and throw it away. So this is a really great thing. And another great thing about the adjustment layer is that you can create as many as you'd like and then apply it on top. So the thing about the adjustment layer is that it affects every single image underneath it, right? So if I do an adjustment level adjustment to this layer and I only want to target to this, what you want to do is to hold on to it and turn that into a clipping mask by holding down an Option Command G or Alt Control G. By creating and making this to a clipping mask, you're pretty much allowing it to only be applied to this target image down here. If you don't create that clipping mask, Option Command G or Alt Control G, then it's going to affect every single layer underneath it. So you want to turn this into a clipping mask. Again, that's Option Command G or Alt Control G. You can also just hold on to the Option key or the Alt key, and as you do that and go in between the layers, it's gonna your icon, your cursor is gonna turn into like a clipping mask cursor. So holding down on Option, hovering over in between the layers, it's gonna say no clipping mask, so click on that, or hover over it, clipping mask, click on that. Again, you can tell it's a clipping mask because it's going to have an arrow pointed straight down at the target layer. Alright, so again, once you use the adjustment layers, a window pops up like this, levels. Now, levels, you can tell, looking at the levels, you're going to have a histogram. Now, your histogram tells you your overall contrast composition. So, it's going to be represented by the dark, the midtones, and the highlights. As you can see here, there's a full range of that in here. Not a lot of highlights here, so maybe we need to bump it up by going down, heading towards the middle. So you don't want to fully overblown it. You just want to make it look a little bit more high contrast or more saturated. So let's lower the highlights, maybe take away a little bit of that mid-tone so that it looks a lot crisper, so all the colors are really popping. And maybe I want to punch out the darks as well. Alright, that looks pretty good. Again, the great thing about this is that you can always just double click on the icon right here and then continue adjusting it as you wish or prefer. So that's adjustment layers. Again, you can stack up as many as you like. You can go here, let's say maybe the colors, I want them to pop out even more. So I will head down to my layers panel, click on this. Let's try hue saturation. So let me bump up the saturation, just to give it a really nice glossy look to it, make all the reds really pop. Maybe it's too much red, so let me use hue here to give it a little bit more yellow. And I want a little bit more brightness, like so. Alright, that looks pretty good. And as you can see, it's not clipped onto the layer, so this is affecting every single layer underneath it. So what I want to do, again, hold down the Option or Alt for the PC, go in between the layers and just click to add it to the stack on top of the target layer. Or Option Command G or Alt Control G to go in and out of the clipping mask. Alright, so from here, I'd say I am happy with what it is. I highlight them, holding down Shift, highlighting every single layer, and then Command E to merge into one layer. So here's our edited layer, and here's our original layer. Now you can see the higher contrast to it, right? And now what we're going to do is to use the masking layer or the layer mask. So to do this, let me just turn our original image off, and here's our edited layer. I want to take this layer and we're going to copy it once again. So in that copy layer, so here's our original edit, and here is our masked edit. So clicking on that second image, the one that you copied out of the original edit that you just created, we are going to click on this little icon here, which is just a rectangular shape with a empty circle in the middle of it. Add layer mask, so click on that. So what happens here is it adds that little layer mask here. So if you want to keep adjusting that layer, you have to click on the layer here. But then if you want to click on the, start masking it, you want to click here, right? So edit the mask, edit the original layer. Alright, so here original layer here, and we have original mask edit here. So what we want to do first, actually something that we should have done at the bit earlier before creating a layer mask, but since you already have the layer mask on, we could do this. Click on the photo that you have here. Now we are going to add a blur filter to it. The easiest way to do that is to, again, click on that layer with or without a mask. So even if you don't have a mask there, click on the layer here, go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Just click on that and we'll add a blur to the whole illustration or photograph. What you want to do is to just give it a nice blur, not too much. Let's say maybe around 2 pixels. Again, it really depends on the quality of your image. Like if you have a low quality image, then you don't have to add as much blur. But if you have a really nice high quality image, then I think your image could take a little bit more of that blur effect. Again, you can go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, or Gaussian Blur. I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. So give it a nice little blur. For me, it's around 2.6% or 2.6 pixels, and press OK. So you pretty much added that filter, the blur filter to this image right here, which is our edit image. Let me just run by that once again, just in case. So we have our original edit here. We are going to copy it. We are going to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and then set your blur to an area. And then press OK. So now let's do it like it was supposed to. I intended it to be. Once you add that blur in there, add that layer mask by heading to the bottom of the layers panel. Click Add Layer Mask, and it's going to create that layer mask right next to it. You could go the other way, you could go this way. There's no really a wrong way to do it. As long as you apply that blur filter to the image, and then apply the layer mask on top of it. So here's our original edit, And here's our layer mask with the blur filter. So now let's head to using the layer mask. To use the layer mask, you want to click on that empty white box or the layer mask that's created next to the image. Again, if you want to continue editing it, click on the image, layer mask, click on the layer mask. So how it works is that layer mask is a really great tool to composite something or add, composite either a secondary image like what we're doing here, or some kind of a filter, patterns, textures, what have you, so that they can seamlessly blend onto the other photograph underneath it. It's also a really good way to erase something and do a more intricate erasing or masking, I guess hence the word, than it is to use the brush or the eraser brush. That's because if you use the eraser brush, then you pretty much just take away immediately, and if you need to fix it, then you have to go back in time a bunch of times. By using the layer mask, it allows you to continue messing around with the image, the edit, um, until you decide, okay, it's pretty good, and I'll merge everything together and apply the mask itself. So, not sure if you saw that already in the um, in the I guess the outline, the class outline, how in layer mask you're not using an eraser. Instead, you are using a brush. So what you want to do, again, highlight on that layer mask, click on the brush. You can choose any brush that you like, which is really good about the layer mask. And here we are going to apply either white or black or anything like a value scale in between. So black takes away, the black takes away whatever is found in this thumbnail or this image right here, the image that you have the mask on. So black takes away. See, we're just basically almost like erasing the image that we have. And then if you switch back to white, then you can bring it back. So again, it's a much better way of going about erasing something in Photoshop so that you can be a little bit more detailed and intricate about it. And if you mess up, you can always just switch between black and white. Now, if you go value, let's say a mid-tone, a light, or a gray, or a dark gray, then it's like erasing it at 20%, 30%. So, yeah, so either go black or white. So again, black takes away, white brings it back. And you can pretty much look at your thumbnail to see the type of edit that you are doing. Alright, so with that in mind, let's start masking out things that we find that we want focused on. For example, the bridge right over here, maybe I want focused on, and everything else will be sort of just blurred out in depth of field. And maybe this area, like the middle area, is what I want focused on. So let's begin doing that. So click on your layer mask. I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to start out with a hard brush. And I'm going to zoom in. So I'll take black. And that's when I'll start erasing it out. Now you can turn on your opacity toggle as well so that you can have a bit more control over it using the pen pressure. And if you're doing that, if you turn on your opacity toggle, you pretty much turn on and have the possibility of having midtones in there. So you can control that erasing, the masking off, so it's not fully like erased out of the image or take it away from the image. Again, if you make a mistake like this, switch back to white to bring it back in. So if you're working on something with a lot more details and probably going to take a longer time and you really want to mask it off, then this is a great way to go about it. And pretty much what I'm erasing here, let me showcase it. Let me turn off the original edit. So if I turn that off, this is basically what you're doing. You're basically cutting it out of this photo right over here. So what we're seeing here with the sharper image is basically just the original edit underneath it. So let's go back to that layer mask and just continue doing this. Again, for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going a little bit faster. But if you have more time, definitely spend more time on it. So if you guys are working your illustrations, you want to composite something, this is a really, really good way to add textures. It's a really good way to add patterns into your illustration. Introduce some kind of a blending mode and you want to isolate it towards like a certain a certain object in your illustration and not have it be hit anything else. The layer mask is going to be your best friend in that. So practice this. Practice the layer mask. I know it can get a little bit confusing at the beginning. Trying to figure out, okay, how does this affect this and what do I do here and here? You just want to remember that the layer mask just allows you to composite things on top of each other and isolate the objects that you want the effects or other images to be applied onto. And just, just remember that black takes away and reveals whatever's underneath it, and white brings it back if you make a mistake or you decide, okay, that's not really what I want it to be. And the great thing about this, unlike the erase tool where you can only choose default brushes, you can use just about any brush to, mask something out. You can use a textured brush or any of the custom brushes that you see here. So again, just for the assignment, you want to create like some sort of a miniature toy city. Adjusting the depth of field that we have here and really hyper focus on a certain area to make it look like you're looking like looking at some kind of a Lego set. And again, choose an image that has a really good view from above at an angle similar to this, or the ones that I've shown you here. And I'm gonna mask off anything that I see in the middle. This building, I'm gonna keep it blurred so it still creates that really strong depth. Maybe I'll keep the boat here. That means if I keep the boat here, I'm gonna have to align it in the same plane. So these areas here are probably going to be in focus just a little bit compared to the rest of them. Here, this building. See how much detail you can do this just rather than just erasing it. use this plane, will be in sharp edges as well. The trees accidentally kind of sharpened it, so I'm going to blur it back in. That's pretty good. Once you're done with it, you can right click it. You can, once you hover over that layer mask, you can click on it, right click, and it gives you options to disable it. If you want to bring it back, there's going to be a big red X on it. You can bring it back, enable it. You can ask the mask selection, delete layer mask, apply layer mask, so click on that. We'll permanently apply it to this image. So now, if you look at this, that's pretty much how it looks like now. You just pretty much just erased it. And those transparent areas are just various degrees of the grayscale. So any one of these. And they will be, by default, be applied if you use the pen pressure because you're messing around with pure black all the way up to white. So let's say I want to push that back a little bit more. So what I'm going to do, copy this again, turn that off. I'm going to filter. Let me turn everything on. So the very third one, the third copy, I'm going to filter, blur, Gaussian blur it again. So I want to add more blur to the furthest back here. Push that a lot. So original, second edit, third edit here. So let's create a clip, a layer mask on that as well. Click on this, layer mask. So now I want to leave that high blur in the background, but then keep a softer blur like this in the foreground as well as the middle ground. So I'm going to take my soft brush, I'm going to make it a lot bigger. Remember, black takes away, so click on this. And I'll just, using the pen pressure, I'll lightly erase away this layer right here and bring some of those details back. Holding down on the spacebar, I could pan if I don't see the whole document in front of me or the whole image. Let's say I want to be a little bit more detailed, so I'm going to make my brush smaller. And maybe from where this large building stands and then as it goes along the plane, that's going to be my second middle ground. So I'll erase away and bring those back in. If I zoom in, let's say, okay, the boat looks a little bit weird because there's some blurry water. You could go back in there and add blur to that as well. But again, the purpose of this assignment is just to practice the tools and the features like the layer mask as well as the adjustment layer, so you do not have to be so detailed about everything. However, it's a really good practice to be really detailed because you can apply that onto your own work in the future. Alright, so let's go to the layers, original edit. Here's the original image, our edit, our first pass at the blur, and then our second pass at the blur, blurring that background just a little bit more. And to apply the effects, you can either merge everything together, or you can right click it if you still want to mess around with it. You can keep it the way it is until you are finalizing everything, or you can right click and then apply layer mask. So it will apply it to this. So that's pretty much how it looks like. At the end, you say, oh, let me adjust it just a little bit more. You can apply your adjustment layers. Let's try levels once again, because I really want that toy-like appearance to it. Bump up the contrast. Bring in some more of that light, almost like a desk lamp is sort of shining on top of it. I don't want to lose a lot of the details, so I want to be careful with it. That's pretty good. Here, I'm not going to put a clipping mask on it because I want it to affect every single layer underneath it. And there you have it. Hopefully, this explains or this gives you ideas of how to go about, applying those effects onto your photograph, so that you can create yourself a really cool looking miniature city. Alright, thanks again. Till next time.